So, welcome once again to the Artifex Talent Spotlight for November. Our talent to be spotlighted this month is Chronic. Hello.
Hey, Peyton Fury. Good to see you.
Hayden, see you. You just activated Siri.
You silly thing.
God, you think that things like see ya would already be programmed into, they're not talking to you, Siri. It's not all about you today.
Yeah. She doesn't know better.
She doesn't know any better, no. We are currently in Snoozy's Campfire, which is usually the setting for the Friday Campfire events. And I believe it was you that suggested that we do this here, wasn't it? What's special about this map to you?
Well, it's where I share stuff on Friday nights, and it's got that cozy campfire feel. So I figured it'd be a good location, and I'm emotionally familiar with it, so sounded good to me.
So Chronic, who are you? What do you do?
I am an author. My pen name is John Wordsmith. I write a variety of things. I write poems, I write novels. I've got 3 of them already out on Amazon. If you look up the name, and well, I don't know if you're going to get a direct match, because Amazon being selling stuff, it won't match you if you don't have an ad out there. So, but and I occasionally write some songs, which are either humorous or tell a story, but just a few. So that's who I am. I am unemployed. Have been unemployed for over 3 years, and that's 99% of the reason why I'm a writer. Although I started writing before I was unemployed, and unemployment merely provided that initial impetus to not impetus. Whoops. there's a typo verbally done. Initial impetus to get serious about it. So shortly after I got unemployed, that's when I published my first novel, and so now that's sort of my job. I don't sell a lot, but this is fun for me. Something I enjoy doing.
That's important. What were you doing before, if you don't mind me asking?
I worked at a large company in the Midwest that manufactures stuff, and I was the programmer. Now, you're going to say, what? I was the programmer at the company, and I did the updates of the mainframe computer software on a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly basis, and then completely updated the operating systems for the mainframes on a every year or bi-yearly basis, migrating, levels of changes throughout all the different mainframes where I worked.
I see. Sounds tedious.
It was tedious, but it gave me a lot of spare time. It's like, honestly, I'm not surprised that I got laid off. 5 minutes of work every day, an hour on Friday. Well, yeah, I was a good call on their part, although they did basically get rid of almost all their infrastructure because it's cheaper. So.
All right. So, have you only been writing these last 3 years, or has it been like a lifetime hobby that you're now just devoting all your time into?
I started trying to write when I was in high school, like my senior year, and actually came up with like 10 or 20 pages on some fantasy novel about this guy that has all kinds of weird stuff happen to him. He's like a college student in a small Midwest town that has a season called the Season of Whimsy, where strange, bizarro things happen all the time. And, that was a start. And then I set it aside, when I started working full time. And I went through a phase where I worked pretty regularly on the first novel. But it, wouldn't have gotten done if I didn't have the spare time once I was laid off. So it's always been something I'm interested in.
Well, it's very cool that you turned it into something that's paying your bills.
Yeah, don't make a lot of money. The more the better.
A labor of love.
Yeah.
So, out of everything you've written so far, what has been your favourite piece and why?
Well, gosh, it's hard to say. I love, The Cockroach, the Princess, and the Zombie, which is my second novel, because it's just funny, silly, dorky, and it's sort of an allegory about bad dating. It's a love triangle. He scurried along with his business. Ever a food crumb to snatch up, ever some grease to lap up. No lack of food for me. No siree. I'm as happy as can be. By the way, I'm in the beginning part of this, I'm trying to imitate children's novels in some of its rhyming technique. He paused, his antennae all astir. He knew something was coming, but of what, he was not sure. It certainly smelled good enough. He twisted his head around and followed the scent. Ah, it's a human wearing perfume. The scent is so beautiful. So off he scurried to smell that wonderful scent. Was it rose? As he rushed headlong to the smell, it too approached him. A waft of the white dress knocked him over. And maybe that was good, he thought as he righted himself. Who knows? She might have stepped on me. I wouldn't do it all. He turned himself around and followed the scent as quickly as his little feet could carry him. But soon the white satin receded into the distance, off on an inexplicable errand of its own. Seeing that the scent was gone, he sat down on his two back feet and sighed. It would have been nice to have gotten a better smell of her. Not today, though. So he went on with his usual business, looking for stray pieces of food and leaving fecal trails for his other roommates to follow. His other roommates were so messy, by the way. They were the ones who gave cockroaches the bad name. Talk about little piggies. He was constantly picking up after them. Droppings here and droppings there. They just never could figure it out. You didn't poop in your room. You pooped on your food. By the way, I looked this up in Wikipedia, and this is accurate. It's just common sense to any clean cockroach, but no, they just couldn't figure it out. So he's always cleaning up mucus and poop from where they dropped it and throwing the mess outside of the collective burrow. And talk about grooming? Every day was a constant issue, especially after moving all their feces out of the room. Oh well, what was a guy gonna do? You had to sleep in the room after all. You have no idea how disgusting it is to wake up with mucus and feces over yourself after a good night's sleep. Yuck! And then the grooming again. Jeez, maybe he should get other roommates. But you can't beat the rent. So what do? Yep, just put up with it. So he continued the rest of the day, occasionally hauling goodies back to the apartment for late night snacks. By the end of the day, he decided to call it quits and head back home. No rush hour here, climbing along the edges of the floor, out of the way of giant feet that might unknowingly crush you. Nope, not today. He kind of wondered where the other guys were foraging, and he certainly hoped the moochers weren't eating the tidbits he had stored away. In any case, he went home to bed down for the night. Night, you ask? Yes, he was an Asian cockroach. They sleep at night. His name was Squee Shi, if you were ever curious. So Squee headed home for the night. Sure enough, the bums had pooped in the room, so before he sacked out, he cleaned it up fastidiously and then lay down. On the plus side, the sense of cockroach community always was good. Those pheromones did you wonders in helping you feel safe at night. So I guess there were some advantages to his roommates. As messy as they were, there always was a positive side to every smelly situation. You just have to put the right spin on it. So if you want some background on how I started writing stories, it's an interesting one here for that story. And I used to go to a writers group, and it was mostly ladies, so they all loved fantasy. I'm not a big fantasy fan. I mean, I can write it, but I decided, well, I should write something, for the girls here in the group, and of course, it has to be fantasy. So, but now, what should I put in the book? And my first natural idea was something that'll get a rise out of the ladies. So I had to write about a cockroach because that was going to get the ultimate rise. There are other ones that I really, really love. There's the short story called The Dark, which is about this slimy lowlife dude, which I read this entire thing to one two-step. He got a group of friends together Halloween night, and it's sort of Halloweenish. It's about this slimy guy that says, I'm tired of doing the usual stuff. I'm going to go out to the park, maybe scare some kids, steal their money, and maybe get into more trouble than that. And instead he has an encounter with the dark, which it's kind of a horror story, a little Cthulhu-ish, and that one's a favorite of mine because the background story on that is I went out with that same writing group to get inspiration, and there we were in this dark forest, dark and gloomy, and before you knew it, I had this vision of something, and I literally ran home and sat down on my PC and typed it up in a couple hours. But it's one of my favorites because it is very, very much an allegory, about the sacrifices you make coming back on you, and in this case, in a very bad way. So that's a favorite of mine. But there are other ones like it's called So Long, and it's sort of, I'm trying to imitate some of the classic 50s sci-fi series that had this sweep and expanse and wideness, to their storytelling that, a lot of sci-fis haven't duplicated since that time. So, this story is about a sentinel sitting on a planet for a very, very long time. Thus the name of the story, So Long, and watching for his people's enemy to show up. So I like that because it just has that old-fashioned 50s feel to it. So
I take it that you're not only a big writer but a big reader, that the two seem to go hand in hand.
Oh, gee, I've got stacks of books. Right now, I've got a 4-inch stack, a 3-inch stack, and a 1-book stack that I need to read. But I've read stacks. Got a stack of books sitting on my living room table that I need to log into my. I keep a list of the books I've read that I haven't pitched, and so I have got a stack of books in my back room, and need to get some more shelves and put them onto that, because I read a lot depending on the season. Right now is National November Writing Month, and I've not been reading as much as I could be because I need to spend extra time writing, and that's an opportunity that many writers will take in November to get a lot of practice in. An interesting side story. Me and my brother used to sit on the hillside next to the next to last house that we lived in, and we would just tell stories to each other when we were kids. Actually, we did a round robin sort of concept. I'd start a story or he'd start a story, and then after a while, we'd say, okay, now you carry it on, and then you can divert the story wherever you want. And but that was a lot of fun. So it's being artistic runs in the blood. And
Nice.
as a matter of fact, my father was a very, very good painter. I've got lots of his paintings in my living room that, are really well done. And even my brother can draw if he takes the time. I was sitting there waiting for dinner to get made one time and watching him doodle on the kitchen table, and I thought, oh, he's just doodling. And they looked over and went, oh, it's this massively awesome graphical art design. And I had no idea all these years that he could do something like that. So yeah, it runs in the family. I've put some effort into drawing also, and I can do it if I need to.
So of those stacks and stacks and stacks of books that are dotted around your home, which authors had the most influence in the way you write?
I picked up a lot of stuff from all the different authors. There's the classics like Clarke and Asimov, but then there's the more current authors like David Weber, with his military sci-fi, which you can see reflected in some of the stories I've read at the campfire, like The Adventures of Annie, which is the story about a militia girl that on Mercury that gets called into a little war that and then decides to carry on as a full-scale military person afterwards. But David Weber, S.M. Sterling, all his alternate reality series, they're just most of his stuff is really good. Weber and Sterling, and especially, I don't want to get into all the series, so we'll just. Oh, hold on a second. I gotta run over to my stack to look up his name.
I long look over to hear one of the stacks just fall over in the background. Just
crash. Neil Asher is the best sci-fi writer of them all, because he is a materials physics scientist, and so he gets so many really good details into his writing. It's just wow. Yeah, those impact me, and I read bucket loads of Warhammer 40,000. So I've read lots of military sci-fi.
So as a Brit, talking to a fellow sci-fi lover, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up my favourite piece of sci-fi fiction out there, period. Red Dwarf.
Oh, yeah?
Have you ever seen the show Red Dwarf?
I have heard of it, and I have never gotten around to watching it.
Oh, my soul.
So many.
Oh.
I mean, I'm in second season of Discovery and first season of Picard, and trying to get caught up on all of those. Actually, I was like, naturally, because I'm only Netflix, I was like a year, and I don't have cable. Can't really afford it, it's too expensive. But I was like a year behind on Game of Thrones, so.
You didn't miss out much.
It was not as terrible as everyone said. It
was blown out of proportion, but
yeah, I would agree with many people that the justification for what Daenerys did in the end was not built up very well from a writing perspective.
Do you think it was a pacing thing, or do you think it's just fundamentally wrong?
Just her flipping out like that just didn't feel in character. Now, if they had built it up properly, and there was a few times where you had hints that there was problems, but they didn't really put enough time into developing that thing. And then all of a sudden, boom. And it was like a series-ending event, and it just felt artificial.
All right, we're almost at the end here, but I'm going to bring up, because I'm a dungeon master, and I do look into a lot of bits and pieces when it comes to writing, only to the cursory level so I can run my campaign. But
I play D&D too.
Oh, you play D&D too? So what's your take on villains? How do you write a good villain, in your opinion?
A good villain, everybody's feeling about what makes a good villain, but I like the bad guy in the dark. He's a good villain because he's so incredibly evil. I made him as evil and creepy as I possibly could. I mean, he's as misogynistic and low life, as I could think of. And that makes a good bad guy, because you as a reader going, I hate him. And hopefully you don't hate me because I wrote that kind of character. Because the reality is he's somebody for you to hate, and he's designed for you to be hated. And many villains are designed to be hated. And so whatever works for you, because some of what you write may not appeal to I don't have a goal of aiming for mass market sales. I mean, one of the reasons why, although me writing a fantasy novel sort of appeals to more of the market out there, because there's a lot more people reading fantasy than there is sci-fi. So I usually, though, I don't appeal to mass market interest. I write something that I feel is good, it's well written, and if people like it, great. If it's a small amount of people, boo-hoo. But I just have to accept the fact that I don't write necessarily the type of stuff that the mass market would purchase. No Amish romances and stuff like that. Although I did sort of write a romance in The Cockroach, the Princess, and the Zombie. Although not a very untraditional fantasy.
Final question. How did you find Artifex?
How did I find Artifex? Well, I was somewhere and I somehow ended up at Snoozy's Campfire, and you guys were advertising Artifex, with your billboards and whatever, and that's how I got onto Artifex, and it's just one of those things that happens. I don't even remember who it was. I just kind of ended up there one Friday. It's been a while. I can't even remember how long it's been. A year or two. So.
It's been quite a while. You didn't start with your VR headset in VR chat, or?
Did I start in VR chat with a VR headset? No. I was strictly playing video games. Well, let me back up. I was playing video games and an alternate VR social app called AltSpace, which has had really bad, cheesy-looking avatars, but they've finally updated them to reasonably good quality now. But it's a great place for adults to hang out because they execute the trolls pretty quickly.
Oh, nice.
When they catch them and block them and yada yada. So it was a good place to meet lots of adults that want to talk about adult stuff and not troll or grief ya or whatever. So
finally, is there anything you want to say to any listener, viewer, or observer out there?
If you're a writer, go for it. It always takes practice. Keep practicing. That's all you can really do to get better. When I started as a teenager, I actually still have the original pages of stuff I wrote, and I went back and read through it, and I thought it was really good, as a teenager, but it really was not that good. So practice. Don't strictly imitate your favorites, but imitate bits and pieces of your favorites enough so that you can get a different flavor, But ultimately, it boils down to you develop your own writing technique, through practice. So.
All right. Thank you very much for taking the time out to talk to me, Chronic. And thank you to all of you who are listening all the way to the end. We'll catch you next month for December's Artifex Spotlight.
Thanks. Yep. Okay. Here's another poem. It's called Booger. I do have gross out humor, which, well, it gives me a giggle. So Here we go. Ah, the joy of rolling a booger after a meal. It's sweeter than a spoon of sugar, yes. The smooth, gooey consistency just brings joy to me. To feel it sliding around and around on my fingers, slowly congealing from a creamy white or yellow to a dark grayish green, small and round. I then flick it to the ground and then dig around to see if I can find another.
Thank you, Chronic.